we'll get started. Okay, so let's start our tour of Haifa. So we're going to start in the essential Haifa, the spot that you always start with when you come to Haifa, the beautiful Baha'i Gardens. And we're standing right here at the overlook. This is one of the favorite spots up here. There's a beautiful balcony. It's sort of rare to get in here nowadays. They only allow certain tours. And I'll explain a little bit about the Baha'i. The Baha'i are a religion that is decided that Haifa would be their main city. I'll get to this story in a moment. But Haifa is the third largest city in Israel. Roughly 600,000 people live in Haifa. There's lots of other towns in the area along the coast called the Krayot. Kiryah in Hebrew means town. It's actually a biblical term. And altogether in the Krayot Haifa area, there's about 1.5 million people that live in that area. It's definitely a big metropolitan. And you can see in Haifa, we have three different layers, essentially. The port area, this is the port of Haifa. By the way, there's a military port over here, or the Navy is very important in the Israeli Navy port in this area. And the middle, which is called the Hadar, and all the way at the top, known as the Carmel. And it's interesting because socioeconomically, there's also a significant difference between the bottom and the top. And originally, Haifa really started down here by the port. The port is a relatively new port in this area. Haifa was not a big port during the ancient times. We'll end at a place called Telshikumona, which is probably the original Phoenician port in this area, but where the port is today was created in the 1920s by the British when the port of Jaffa was not deep enough for the big ships, and the British created the port of Haifa. Eventually, 1948, the British leave, and Israel takes over the port. More about Haifa very soon, but the Baha'i, this is a religion that's derived from Islam in Iran or Persia in the 1700s, 1750 or so. A man named the Baha'u'llah, which means the man who sees God, has conversations with what the prophet of the religion called the Bab, the door. And the Baha'u'llah is the main person that creates the religion. The name Baha'i comes from his name as well. And the Persians, the Shiite Muslims of Persia, not too happy about this crazy dude that is talking different things about Islam. And they chase him out of Iran, and he comes to the Ottoman Empire, and they place him in jail in Akko. And Akko is about 10 miles away from Haifa. Eventually, they realize that he's not that dangerous, and they allow the Baha'u'llah to walk around and to sort of a house arrest kind of thing. And he walks around quite a bit and arrives in the Carmel many times. He really likes Mount Carmel. And when he dies, he's buried in Akko. But his followers decide to make Haifa the main city of the Baha'i religion. And essentially this golden dome that's very famous for the pictures of Haifa is a shrine in honor of the Baha'u'llah. He's not buried here, buried in Akko. And the religion's very interesting. They believe in symmetry. You can see from the very beautifully manicured gardens that they have here. They believe in symmetry. They believe in balance in the world. Men and women are equal in the religion, so they're egalitarian in that sense. And every person of the Baha'i needs to come and volunteer for 2 years of their life. Doesn't have to be consecutive. And you can volunteer in different places in the world, but many come to Haifa. They also have a university or a teaching facility down here as well. There's a very, very small percentage of them in Israel, not even 1% of the population. So the Baha'i Garden, one of the most famous places in Israel, in Haifa, sorry. And here's another view from down below. We can see the different, this is another entrance. This building over here is their university. We're getting a little bit closer to the building. As I said, the shrine, when you go in, it kind of has a feel of a mosque. There's carpets. You're supposed to take your shoes off when you go in. Tzipi, I don't know if you've ever visited in here, but it's a very, very cool place.
Wait, just to add to it,
yeah.
My friend was the insurance guy that had all their gold that is hiding there. And very few people get to see the treasures, but they keep unbelievable treasure, gold and jewelry and a lot of stuff right there in a safe that only the insurance person and my friend and me got to, I got to see just a little room. So, but they're amazing people. And by the way, many of them live in Wadi Nisnas, in the downtown, where I was telling you that you can go to have some good Arab goodies.
Good falafel down there. Very good. We'll get to Wadi Nisnas soon. The Baha'i, by the way, have centers all around the world. There's one in Los Angeles. They have a temple in Chicago, New York, other parts of the world. They believe in world peace. They're very peaceful people. And as I said, a lot of the building style, as I said, they're Persian. Originally, the religion comes from there. So if we're planning a heist, Tzipi, you know where the gold is. So we'll talk to you about that. Another interesting place in Haifa is this, that you can't see much from the outside. It's a building that's built over a cave. I'll show you the other side. We're right on the coastline by the tip of the Carmel. And in here is the tomb, not the tomb, sorry, the cave of Elijah. The cave of Elijah the prophet. Now, what does Elijah have to do with Haifa? So we know that this was his stomping ground. He's from the area, he's from the Gilad originally, which is the other side of the Jordan River, from the Jordan River Valley, let's say around Bet She'an on the other side. But he was around here, especially for an event that took place, which we'll talk about very soon, where he had a competition with the Baal prophets. But the cave of Elijah is a very important place. Lots of Orthodox Jews come to visit. This is the outside. You can buy a candle and pray, and we'll go inside and see some of the areas. And of course, kind of like this is the mechitza for the men and the women. It's an Orthodox synagogue. We'll see in a moment inside. And of course, Eliyahu Hanavi Zachur Latov, it was what it says here in Hebrew. Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu, is very, very important in the Jewish tradition. Why? Because Elijah has a very important mission, very important job. He is the one who's going to hold the straps leading in the white donkey on top of which the Mashiach is going to be sitting. The Messiah will be sitting on that white donkey. And we know that Elijah is the guy who will bring about the arrival of the Mashiach, which is why every Shabbat, when all of you, I'm sure you all have a Havdalah ceremony, separating the Shabbat from the mundane, from the days of the week, and we sing there, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Tishmi, Bimhera Yavo Elenu. He should come back quickly, because when he arrives, he's going to bring with him the Mashiach. For the same reason, by the way, Elijah plays a role in the Passover Seder. We leave a cup for him. We open the door for him. We do everything we can for him to join us, because if he comes and joins, we will see the arrival of the Mashiach. So Eliyahu Navi Zachur Latov, we remember him fondly, and he plays a very important role in Judaism. By the way, he plays a very important role in Christianity as well, because if the Christians believe that Jesus is the Messiah, he's got to have a Elijah. He's got to have a Elijah to bring him in. Who plays the role of Elijah in the Christian tradition? Anybody know? He's described very much like Elijah, big hair and wandering around in the desert or the wilderness, it actually says. And that is John the Baptist, the cousin of Jesus, who plays the role of the Messiah. Just another beautiful view of where the cave is. There's a wonderful walk from a church up here called Stella Maris, which we'll visit in a moment, coming down the Carmel to the cave of Elijah. And here's a bit of a better view from what we saw before. All of this is the Bay of Haifa or the Bay of Akko, depends on what side you're looking at. But all of this is the Krayot, the towns I spoke about earlier. And if we look all the way at the end of this ridge is called Sulam Tzor, the ladder of Tyre. And at the end, right here where the ridge goes into the water, is Rosh HaNikra, the grottos. Maybe some of you have been. I grew up about 2 miles from the end of this ridge along the coast on a kibbutz, 2 miles from the Lebanese border. Beautiful area. And as I said, Haifa was the major city that we used to come and visit. Again, the cave of Elijah. Okay, we saw Elijah's cave. Let's go up to the top of the hill, a place called Stella Maris. And Stella Maris is French for the star of the sea. And we'll understand where that comes from in a moment. But what I wanted to show you here is we're in the church. It's a Carmelite church. The Carmelites are Catholics. But the important thing is that underneath the altar is another cave, a different cave than the one we saw down below. This is the Christian version of the cave of Elijah. And in this church, as I said, down below here is the altar where they celebrate Elijah the prophet. So this little structure represents the tip of the Carmel, the star of the sea. The Carmelite order started in the after the Crusaders come to the land. Nowadays, we know about the Carmelites all around the world, but their name comes from Mount Carmel, which is where they started their order. This is the church from the outside, but there was one other thing I wanted to show you here. Again, inside the church, we'll see in a moment a picture of the Christian version of the cave. Here we go. So they believe, according to the Christian tradition, that this is the cave that Elijah lived in or was hanging out in this area. Now, as I said, Elijah, important because in a way, John the Baptist represents Elijah the prophet in the Christian tradition. Excellent. Let's go from Stella Maris, from the tip of the Carmel, to the other. We're going to go down below to one of the interesting places in Haifa, and that is the Maritime Museum, the National Museum of the Navy and the seagoing in Israel. There are a few interesting ships and stories in here. We'll land and talk a little bit about what we see down here. This is at the bottom of the Carmel, and we have several different ships over here. One is the missile boat, the Satil, which is what we see over here. No, sorry, it's this boat over here. Israel does not have a very big navy. We don't have any aircraft carriers or any big ships. We have relatively small ships with missiles and different ways of defending ourselves. And what's more important is we have different submarines. And the submarines, by the way, I know from a friend who's a submarine commander, that when there's a aircraft carrier that comes to Israel of the United States Navy, it's not able to get into the port. It's too big of a ship to be able to come in. And also US submarines come and play war games with the Israeli Navy. According to my friend who's a submarine commander, the Israelis win all the time. I don't know if that's true or not, but he says that we have smaller subs and much more quick and maneuverable, so usually we are able to get across. This specific submarine is a type of submarine that is the same type as the Dakar Submarine. The Dakar is a famous story that essentially a submarine that Israel purchased from Germany. It's this same kind of model that you see here. And the Dakar was purchased from Germany. It leaves from England, from Portsmouth, on its way to Israel in January of 1968. And on its way to Israel, it disappears in the Mediterranean, one of the biggest tragedies of Israeli Navy. Another boat that's important for the naval story in Israel is this. It's essentially a, wow, nachetet. It's used by the Marines. It's a boat that is used, it carries tanks. It's a World War II ship that carried British tanks during the invasion from the British islands into Europe. And it was purchased by the Israeli illegal immigration or clandestine immigration that brought Jews, Holocaust survivors from Europe into Palestine. The British did not allow a number of Jews to come in. There were only a few tens of thousands were allowed in. Many Jews were smuggled into Israel using these kind of boats, and this ship is here to commemorate those events. This is the Dakar, the submarine I talked to you about, sailing out of the port on its way to Israel, 25th of January, 1968. Here's part of the ceremony once again. And on its way, it came all the way up here from England, Germany, through Gibraltar, where it stopped for refueling. And all of these points that you see are check-in. They came up to radio in to the Navy headquarters that they're on their way. And the last point of connection with them was their last radio check off the coast of Israel. And it disappeared as soon as that radio check was sent in. And after a few weeks, the Israeli Navy started looking for this submarine. We could not find it until in May of 1999, after it was declared missing and 68 of its sailors were declared missing in action. This is part of the ship, part of the submarine that was found. And this is in the museum where we just visited. This is the deck, the commanding deck of the submarine. You can see the mark Tzadik 77. This is part of the Dakar, one of the big tragedies of Israeli Navy. Again, also down here by the port in Haifa. And just as a quick way of showing how Israel commemorates a lot of these events and military, we're very good, unfortunately, at monuments. And here in Mount Herzl in Jerusalem is the monument of the Dakar. It's designed to look like a submarine. And it says here, in memory of the Israeli Navy Dakar, Tzadik 77. And inside, you can see that it literally looks like the inside of a sub. With all of these plaques around are the 68 Israeli Navy personnel that were killed, that died in this ship. Another piece of the hull of the Dakar that was placed here on the memorial after 1999 when it was found. What's interesting about this story is that for many, many years, for decades essentially, there were lots of conspiracy stories. There were theories that it was shot down by the Egyptians, that all kinds of things that we didn't really know what happened to it. And as I said, all of these plaques have the names of the soldiers that were killed. The sailors, we don't know where they are in terms of their bodies. Some remains were found, but these plaques commemorate those sailors. Israel, unfortunately, is very good at commemorating, and this is a whole other topic that we could talk about, memorials and how we commemorate our dead in Israel. We went all the way to, you know what I want to show you in the geography. We're coming from the coastline, from Jerusalem, all the way to the tip of Mount Carmel. Okay, you can see Mount Carmel over here, literally protruding into the Mediterranean. But the highest point of the Carmel is a little bit farther up over here, past the Daliat el Carmel, the Druze village, and we're going to land over there and visit a place called the Muhraka. And Muhraka is the highest point of the Carmel. Beautiful views over here. And let's take a look at the views that we can see from here. First of all, looking to the west, you can actually see the Mediterranean, okay, shining over here, the Mediterranean. In this direction are the mountains of the Chamron. In fact, the West Bank is not that far from here, and the mountain of Chamron. And if we look in this direction towards the Jezreel Valley, you can see the landing strips of the airport. This is a military airport. Shh, don't tell anybody. It's a secret Air Force base, the Northern Air Force Base of Israel. This is Mount Tabor, where Deborah, the prophetess, sat in judgment, and the story of Barak and Sisera and the battle that took place here. And the ridge over here is Mount Gilboa, where another biblical story took place. Saul and his 3 sons are killed in battle. And this valley, the Jezreel Valley, is also known as the Valley of Armageddon in the Christian tradition. At the end of times, this is where there will be a big fight. Now, what does this have to do with our story of Haifa? We're still talking about Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Navi. And let's take a look at a statue over here. It's a church, it's a Carmelite church. And take a look at this statue. This is Elijah the prophet standing over a man here about to kill him and slay him. The story is, and this is in the book of Kings, Elijah was the prophet, and as we know in the Bible, in the Tanakh, there are prophets that usually are angry prophets. What does that mean? They say to their kings, no, 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 you're doing the wrong thing, and here's what God tells you that you should be doing. And Elijah was one of those prophets. The king that he was bugging all the time and telling him that he's doing the wrong stuff is a guy named Ahab. Ahab is married to Jezebel, Izebel, and Jezebel is not Jewish. She's not from the Israelites. And Elijah keeps telling Ahab, you are doing wrong in the eyes of God. And eventually Ahab and Jezebel say to Elijah, you know what? You say that your God is stronger than our God. Let's have a competition. And they bring 100 prophets of the Baal god, which is the local Canaanite god. And the competition is to see who can light a fire from a stack of wood that is laid there in front of them without using any matches or any way to light the fire. And the Baal prophets are saying all kinds of things and running around in circles and doing all kinds of wizardry, and eventually they can't light the fire. Finally, it's already a few hours later, it's Elijah's turn, and he comes to the stack of wood, pours a bucket of water on it to show how difficult it is to light a fire, and then prays to the Israelite God. A lightning bolt comes out of the sky, lights the fire, and of course, the Baal prophets see that the Israelite God is in fact the strongest God in the area, and Elijah, it says in the story, slays 100 of these Baal prophets and kills them, and Ahab and Jezebel run away to their capital city by the name of Israel. Now, this story, according to the tradition, took place right here at the tip of the Carmel, which is why the Carmelite order celebrates this story here on Mount Carmel. And in our story, this is sort of an interesting way of looking at Elijah. In Judaism, we don't see him as a warrior or as someone who would be slaying the other prophets. However, we do know that Elijah is really the strongest connection. He's sort of an interesting guy. He doesn't die. Anybody remember what happens to Elijah? Finally, at the end of his days, he's walking around by the Jordan River with his apprentice, Elisha, or Elisa in English. And all of a sudden, they see a chariot of fire coming down from the sky. And Elijah gets on this chariot and goes into the heavens. He's taken up by God and disappears, which when you think about is a very interesting, is it a rocket ship? Is it a UFO? What was going on there? But clearly Elijah is a very interesting character in the story. So Muhraka, beautiful views. It's a really cool place to come and visit, if only for the views that it allows. Another archaeological site in Haifa at the tip of Mount Carmel is Telshikumona. And this is a very cool thing about Israel. Look at this. We're in the middle of Israel by the tip of the Carmel. This is not even a national park. Look at these amazing mosaics that are basically in the middle of this municipal park. People can walk around and see this. This is a Byzantine church from the 4th century. And we know that where Shikumona is in this edge was really the spot where the original harbor, the original port of Haifa was. So there was a very small reef here that allowed the sailors, the Phoenician sailors, to come in here. And you've heard of the Phoenicians because they were very famous for sailing all around the Mediterranean. And they were famous because they had a lot of parties on the beach. And when you bring your guitar and some beer sitting on the beach, you have a bonfire. And they realized that what happens when you have a bonfire and the sand gets heated, you can make glass out of it. And in fact, they were very famous, the Phoenician glass, making especially little vessels, trading with them all around the Mediterranean. And we know that the Tel, where we're standing on the top of it, was at the tip of Mount Carmel, which is over here. And this area, essentially not excavated up until today, was a port city of the Phoenicians all along the Mediterranean: Beirut, Sidon, Tyre, Akko, Haifa, Dor, from there to Jaffa, Gaza, and Ashkelon, and so on. So this is probably the original Haifa. The Phoenicians or Canaanites 5,000 to 4,000 years ago. This is one of my favorite buildings in Haifa. It's called the Machon Lecheker Yamim V'Agamim. It's the Institute for the study of lakes and sea. And they do a lot of marine biology and a lot of interesting research in this building. It's very cool because it's literally on the Mediterranean, the building. I've been inside here, and the windows, you feel like you're literally on the water, like on a ship. So this is the building over here. And some of the interesting finds over here in this area is this little pool. So take a look at this man-made pool in the reef. We know that the Phoenicians had a very important secret. Not only did they know how to build, how to make glass vessels, they also held the secret of a color, a dye that they used for, in the ancient times, for coloring clothing. And that color is purple. Why is purple the color of royalty? Because the royals wanted to show that the most expensive color they can afford, and the most expensive color was blue and purple, that was made artificially in these kind of pools, where the Phoenicians held the secret of how to make this dye. In fact, King Solomon in the Bible, it says, wanted to convince the Phoenicians to tell him the secret of how to do this. He marries one of the, King Solomon had 1,000 wives. He's considered the most wise of the kings of Israel. I'm not sure why having 1,000 wives is a smart thing to do. But at any rate, he wanted to get the secret of how to make this color, this dye. And the dye is made out of this, it's a snail, similar to a snail. And it lives in this kind of shell. And what the Phoenicians realized that they can do is from the blood of this snail, they were able to make this special coloring of blue and purple. So we know purple is the color of royalty, but we also know that in the Jewish tradition, where do we use this, the color of this snail? We use it in the talis and the talit. The talit is supposed to have a string of blue that was purchased or made by this, using this snail. Here are some of the shells of the industry, not today, but obviously this is not ancient, but today it's discovered, rediscovered how to make this special dye. And if you want to buy a super extra special kosher talit with using this ancient method of dye, they started using this. There's some places in Israel that make this. So that is Telshikumona, as we mentioned, over here by at the tip of Haifa. And finally, one of the other places mentioned here is Wadi Nisnas. And I know that Tzipi mentioned this. Wadi Nisnas is a very special place. It's a neighborhood that has a mixed population of Christians, Jews, Muslims, Baha'i. I didn't know Baha'i lived down there in larger numbers as well. And it's a model, essentially a model to all of Israel on how we can actually get along. And this is the building, the Matnas, the community center. It's called Beit HaGefen, the house of the vineyard. And it's a very interesting symbolism because in the Tanakh, the prophet Zechariah says that peace will come, v'ish tachat gafno v'te'enato yeshiv. Peace will come and all of us will be sitting in our home underneath our fig tree and underneath our grapevine. So the symbolism of Beit HaGefen, the house of the grapevine, is to show that we get along peacefully in the city of Haifa. The community center has the facade with this very cool gates. These are essentially the gates into the community, symbolically, of course, where you have the symbol of Islam, Judaism, and Christianity all represented here. You can see the name Beit HaGefen once again on the community center. And this is, they hold all kinds of different exhibits over there in the community center. This is a mosaic that shows Haifa, the Baha'i temple. And notice these three people here. You have a Hasidic Jew, you have a Muslim cleric, and a Catholic bishop, essentially, because of their pink and purple caps. And so that's, again, representing the different elements of the religion. Here's this gate, the community center. Notice that up here on the roof is a very famous symbol that is part of the tradition of Haifa. Every December, Haifa celebrates as a city what they call the Holiday of Holidays. And it's a celebration of Hanukkah, Christmas, and Ramadan. Ramadan doesn't always fall at that time frame, more or less, but it's a wonderful way to celebrate all of the diversity of Haifa. And on top of the building here, you can see it's usually lit up during December. You can see the Chanukiah, the symbol of Islam, and the little Christmas tree up here. They're all lit up for the Holiday of Holidays. There's different events. People come from all around Israel to celebrate this holiday. Also in Wadi Nisnas is a little market, a shuk, with the best falafel in the country, in my opinion. And it's interesting because it's called the Brothers Falafel, Falafel Ha'achim. And across the street started another falafel store. And they were, for a long time, they were rivals, and there were, some people said the Brothers is better, and some people said that the Effendi is better. And of course, eventually they decided, instead of fighting about it, they're going to embrace the fact that this is the place for falafel eaters to come and try falafel. And it became a tradition that when you come down to Wadi Nisnas, you can't eat just one falafel. You got to have from both sides so that you get the flavor from both of the stores. Another interesting place down there is Santa's house. Yes, believe it or not, in Israel we have a Santa's house. There's actually a guy. He looks the part. He's chubby with a white beard, and he sits and greets the children every Christmas. This is the Christmas tree outside his house. And there are several different pieces of art when you walk around the neighborhood. This is, again, the entrance to the community center, but there is another piece here with, this looks like sound waves. And there are quotes on here, basically talking about how we need to pay attention, all the background noise, the white noise that's around us. We need to be more focused on the different messages that we send each other and ignore the noise. There's some, remember if there's more pictures here. Here's some more of the art. You literally walk around the neighborhood and see different artwork. Okay, I don't think we have any more of the pictures here. So Wadi Nisnas, as I mentioned, a very interesting place. And today, it's a neighborhood, it's in the lower part of town, so the lower socioeconomic area. Oh, that's already Akko. Okay, very good. Tzipi, did you want anything to, do you have anything to add or tell us? What do you think?
So first of all, thank you, because it was really fascinating. And what I think is that I can't wait for the corona to be over and for me to get to Israel, with maybe all of you.
I agree.
I would add two things, personal reflections. One is about the Dakar. I was in high school and my neighbor disappeared. He was in the Navy. He was not supposed to go on the Dakar. And he switched with a friend. And I remember how every day the whole neighborhood would just try to figure out what's happening. It was all over the news. All Israel was looking for them. and it was very, very painful. So that's one reflection. And the second reflection that I wanted to share with you is you mentioned the landicraft in the museum. The ship is called Af Al Pichen.
Right.
And my mom, as I told you before, was a Holocaust survivor that arrived on a different ship, the Wedgwood, illegally to Israel from Italy. Just one sentence about the Al Afpichen, because it was a landcraft that was made in 1941, but was bought by the Mossad in 1946. They gave it a Swedish name because when the Mossad smuggled the Jews that survived the Holocaust from Europe, they went on a different name. And they arranged the ship so it will have enough space for all the illegal immigrants. They were all young people, mostly from Poland, between the ages of 20 to 40. My mom was 20, and I remember her telling me the story. She said, we were so used to getting everything that they gave us a bag, and we said, what is it? And they said, you always get stuff, but here you're going to give stuff. And it was throwing up because they basically threw up a lot. And I still remember how my father always thanked my mother that she felt so sick that they put her on the spoon on top, because he said it was so hot inside. It was, how to live there. So just quickly to share with you, this ship, it was after the Exodus, and they decided to smuggle them from Egypt and Port Said. It went from Italy, and the ship was caught by the British. It was caught near Port Said and was brought to the Haifa port. There was a big fight. The illegal immigrants were told to fight, even fire. One illegal immigrant died, some were wounded, and they were sent to Cyprus. The ship became part of the Israeli Navy when Israel was established. And in 1969, when I graduated from high school, I remember a big event where they brought her to the museum in Haifa. And when you go, you can visit it. And there is a lot you can find about it. One more thing about the name, the minute they were caught, they put the flag, the blue and white flag. It was before Israel was established. And then they came up sending Ben-Gurion the name, and they came up with Al Afpichen. So that's the only two reflections that I wanted to add. And thank you, Gadi, for a wonderful, wonderful presentation.
Thank you. And Af Al Pichen, by the way, means that no matter what, even with your trying to stop us, Af Al Pichen, no matter what, we will continue. And there are, by the way, about 5 or 6 ships that were named that. And you're absolutely right. It was used by the Israeli Navy in the beginning as a craft. I was corrected by Anita, and thank you for sharing that Stella Maris is in Latin, not in French. And it's the whole Carmelite story connects not only to Elijah the prophet, but also to Mary, the mother of Jesus. And the Mount Carmel is connected to the story as well. So Anita says here something about a Roman goddess in Georgia or in Romania. Anita, you want to unmute and tell us the story? This is something new to me. I'm happy to learn. If you're interested, I don't want to put you on the spot. It's up to you. And
quick comment that ties it back in some way to the Jewish connection. Stella Maris, or Maris Stella, you can do it either way, means star of the sea. It referred to the Virgin Mary. However, in Romania, there is a town, Satu Mare, which has the same meaning. It also refers to the Virgin Mary, which brings us to the ironic observation that indirectly the Satmar are named after the Virgin Mary.
That's great. So the Satmar ultra-Orthodox Jews come from that city, and they're actually named after the Virgin Mary. You see, Judaism and Christianity always connect together in the end. Just like many Christians nowadays are starting to realize the connection that Jesus was a Jew and all the traditions, and it's very interesting. Thank you. That's great. I did not know that. Any other questions, aha moments, anything someone would like to share? Not everybody at once.
When I was at the Baha'i many years ago, they said that the main center of the Baha'i was actually across the bay, kind of close to where you pointed out, near where you lived.
Cool.
That's correct, is it not?
It's not that the main center, it's the most important site for the Baha'i is the tomb of the Baha'u'llah, and that's in Akko, on the other side of the bay. You're right, the city of Akko. There's another much less visited Baha'i garden where the tomb of the Baha'u'llah is over there. So yeah, for the Baha'i, the most important city or most important place would be the tomb of the Prophet. And Haifa, because he liked the place and really enjoyed the views, that's why that temple is there, the Golden Dome. Absolutely. Thank you.
We do have one question, and then Roger, you'll be next. Neil Steiner was asking, did they ever find out what happened to the submarine?
What happened to the submarine?
Did they ever figure out what happened?
Yes. So they don't know what happened, but they did find the submarine at a depth of about 3 kilometers, which is a lot more than it could have withstand. The hull, essentially, the pressure broke it through. We don't know what happened. We assume that there was some kind of malfunction of some sort. We don't know if it was caused by people or if it was a force of nature. It was the maiden voyage of the submarine, so maybe the crew wasn't trained well enough. There are all kinds of theories, but we don't know for sure. But it seems they weren't sunk by enemy forces or anything like that. It was probably some kind of accident. What caused the accident, we don't know.
Roger?
Yeah, is it true that Haifa is a headquarters now in that region for a lot of the high-tech companies? And if so, please tell us a little about that.
So there's a few places. It's in Israel. There's a funny new term. We call it Silicon Wadi. So instead of Silicon Valley, we call it Silicon Wadi, which is Arabic and Hebrew for valley or dry riverbed. And there are a few spots like that in Israel, and the southern part of Haifa is one of them. All of the companies, high-tech companies you can imagine, are over there. We have Facebook and Google and Amdocs and several other. Microsoft has some offices there. So one of these Silicon Wadi areas is Haifa. There's another one in Tel Aviv and another one in Beersheba. And it's mostly research and development of a lot of companies. As I mentioned, there's quite a few Israeli companies that have technologies that came out of the Haifa area. Elbit has a very large office over there. Elbit is a military security technology and a lot of drone technology and things like that. So yes, when you drive by on your way out of Haifa to the south, there's a whole, I'd say about 10 to 15 buildings. I wouldn't call them high rises, but sort of shiny offices over there. And that's the Silicon Wadi of Haifa area. Absolutely. Very good.
So I know the Friedmans have a question, and then Anna has a question.
So I wondered if I could ask a question about Akko across the bay there.
Sure.
Our cousin once took us, he's Israeli, once took us on not a tour, but we walked through some tunnels underneath the town there of Akko. But
Yep.
I asked him what it was where we were, what was going on. He couldn't explain it. So I'm hoping you can tell us what we saw.
Sure. So Akko was the capital of the Crusader Kingdom. The first Crusader Kingdom was able to capture Jerusalem, 1099. But then a guy named Salah ad-Din or Saladin came in with the Muslim troops and pushed the Crusaders out of Jerusalem. So they reestablished themselves. This is already 1187 in Akko, in Acre. Akko was the capital of the Crusader Kingdom. In fact, the word Acre, which is the European name that they used for the city, there were a lot of fights between the different Crusader orders and between the shipping cities, towns that brought them over, Genoa and Venice and Pisa and all of those. So they decided to divide up the city in a specific kind of way, and they used the term acre. So it was a specific measurement that was used over there. And the tunnels that you walk through, the Crusaders were very paranoid. And in all of the fortresses and palaces that they built, they created escape tunnels in case the enemy arrives. And that way they can escape towards the port and get out. So there was a very small, sort of a narrow tunnel that you walk through from the Hospitaller complex that led from the dining room to the crypt of the church. So I don't know if you remember, it was a short tunnel, maybe 2 minutes. You have to bend down a little bit towards the end. And there's another big, much bigger tunnel that was built by the Templars, and that's the Templar escape tunnel from their complex all the way to the port. It essentially ended up in the port. So yeah, Akko is a great city, one of my favorites there, with lots of interesting Crusader artifacts, Crusader archaeology.
Thank you. I only saw
Yeah.
the big tunnel.
You saw the big tunnel. Okay, so that's the Templar escape tunnel. You saw it's big enough to bring horses through there and a few troops to run away in case the enemy comes in. Okay, Anna. Anna has a question.
My parents too were Holocaust survivors. When I went in 1966 to visit one of their friends in Haifa who lived, I guess, in the fancy section, we were talking and she said when she came there, you know, when it was Palestine, she actually lived in caves. Is that true?
Lived in caves?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I always
maybe.
wondered about that.
There are quite a few caves on the Carmel. It's a limestone ridge, and there are quite a few caves. I don't know. I've never heard that story. But listen, back in the day, before the day, in biblical times, people's houses, when we read about biblical houses, a lot of times it was a cave that the entrance, the mouth of the cave was closed off with a wall, and they left a little opening so that they could get in and out of the cave. So
If she was
I don't know.
if she was a Holocaust survivor, she couldn't live in a cave, because by then maybe in a tent, if not in an Arab house. And if she lived in Haifa, many of the survivors got homes that belonged to Arabs before, because the Arabs left, escaped, were moved, whatever you call it. So no, I don't know anybody in Haifa that lived in a cave in 46, 78.
No, she was there before 46.
And she was
Before the
alive.
establishment of the state of Israel. But
Yeah.
She got out
once
right
again,
before.
I
Listen,
think there were houses, maybe tents, but again, doubtful.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we were supposed to go to Israel too, but I was too young and there wasn't a state yet. So we ended up in US. They weren't allowing children in back then. It was too dangerous. Young children.
So Barbara's asking if there's a shuk. There is a shuk. It's not like Machne Yehuda in Jerusalem or Shuk Carmel in Tel Aviv, but Wadi Nisnas, where we talked about earlier, definitely has a marketplace. It's a small vegetables and fruit and things like that. Essentially, every town in Israel has this little farmer's market, you could call it, in the American version.
I would say we have time for one more question, if there is any. And if not, I can jump in ahead and say,
wait, one question, one thing. I really want to get into Izzy's program tomorrow. You put it on there, but how do we sign up for it? Can she answer that?
Sure. So just go on the computer on www.classroomswithoutborders.org, and you can go to events and you can see many events. By the way, we are showing movies for free, but we have a Zoom program, and we are going to show a movie about, well, I don't want to waste your time. Just go on it. If you have any questions, you can email me. Leah can share my email. It's tgur, G-U-R, @mac.com, the easy way. And it's really interesting. We have a big thing on Primo Levi with music and musicians from Israel on Thursday. Just go on the website, and it's all free because we believe in supporting educators and all of you that are sitting home. So Leah, just give them my email, and we hope to see you. And thank you, Leah, for a great program.
Absolutely. And thank you to the two of you. Thank you so much, Gadi. This was excellent. And if you'll just put Tipsy, you'll put your email in the chat section, because I'm pasting this, but if you could put it in there. But yeah, I want to mention right now, I also just pasted the link to our YouTube playlist for all travel programs. I believe there's 22 up there now. It includes some of our tours from the first couple tours throughout the United States. The second part of Brazil is up on there right now. But if you want to revisit, if you missed any of our stops, they're all there, and I'll be adding this as well. Our next program is going to be sorry, I'm just pulling it up. It'll be 26 at noon. And the reason why we're going to have it during your lunch hour, so those who are working, hopefully you can step away, but it is going to be with the Israel, I often say this wrong, but the Ornithological Center. And many of you may know that Israel has this incredible phenomenon with bird migration. So we're going to hear from Jonathan Merav, who is the Director of Tourism and International Events, and just see some incredible scenery and learn about this phenomenon that brings thousands of tourists there every year. And then we have other programs in February: Border Town, Mexican Jews of Tijuana, San Diego on the February 8th at 7:30. And then we have another one on Sunday. I think that's the 21st. I believe I have to go back and look. I'm sorry, I lost an email on that. But learning about the Jewish peddlers and merchants that went all around South Carolina. As many, you know, Charleston was a major hub for Jews dating back late 1700s, early 1800s. But anyway, with that said, thank you again to the both of you. And we hope to see you at our next one. Again, it's the 26th at noon. And have a good rest of your evening. So thank you to all. Hi, Nissan.
Everyone.
Thank you, Gadi. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Take care. Toda rabah.
Thank you. It was fabulous.
Everyone.
Toda.
Apologies again for the delay.
Hi, Nisim.
Toda rabah.
Leah,
It was
so the
worth
26th
waiting
was
for.
supposed to be Prague.
Hi,
but that's
Barbara.
right?
Yeah, that's going to be postponed for a little bit. So the next one will be the with Jonathan.
Good, thank you.
Okay.
Shana Tova Nisim.
Toda. Same to you.
Thanks.